Okay, so we're going to get started. Sorry that there was a little delay there in getting my computer to work, but I think I've cleared it out enough so that things won't crash along the way. So today we're doing exercise 224, which is an interior night rendering. The good news is today's really more of a catch-up day than anything else, because you have almost everything you need set up to do the interior night rendering, assuming, of course, that you did the interior day rendering last class. So there's not that much I'm going to talk through for what you're doing today. I'll probably only talk for 15 or 20 minutes, and then you'll have a bunch of time to work, which is really what you all need. I already have set up in my master site file, which I opened here, same file as yesterday. I could, of course, change the view and do a night rendering with a different view. That would be fine. But for our purposes today, I'm going to do the same view as this setup. What I need to do is I need to be able to switch easily from the daytime setup to the nighttime setup and back to the daytime setup as you go through these renderings. And so Vray's built in a way of doing that, assuming, of course, that your flash drive is plugged into the same drive letter. When you switch back and forth, it should work fairly seamlessly. So I just did the day rendering of this particular scene. And before I move on to loading in a night scene or a sunset scene, I'm going to go to my Vray Options, which is the O button in the Vray toolbar, or I could go up to Vray and then Options. And I'm going to open one of the drawers. It doesn't matter which one, just so that I can see visually that this save actually happens. And at the top here, there's a disk icon. And that disk icon, if I click it, will save all of the settings that are in my Vray file. Everything that I've done is going to be saved with this, which is a good thing. You, chances are, have made some customizations. Let's say, for example, you loaded up one of the presets that I gave you that's in the quick rendering setups. You probably made a few changes or a few tweaks along the way. Assuming that this is rendering the way you want to save your own version of this for this particular project. So I would go ahead and click the save icon, and I would put it on my flash drive or in my OneDrive into today's folder or into my assignment 205 folder. There it is. I have a folder for VisOps, and I would save it in there. And I might say, like, this is the day VisOpt, or this is the day environment, or something like that, because this is going to allow me to switch back with all the Vray settings that I'm about to change. So I'll go ahead and save it as the day, and I'm replacing my file. There it is. It's all been saved for me. If I wanted to reload it, I would click on the load button right here. I would pick my VisOpt file, in this case the one that I just saved, and click open, and everything would reload itself for me, which is exactly what I want to have happen. Now, when we switch over to the night scene, I have some quick rendering setups for the night scene for you guys to work with. Under today's exercise, so here it is, exercise 222. If I come down here under night HDRI, I'm going to visit the quick rendering setups page, which is right here. I already had it open. And I'll scroll past the basic day scene 1, the basic day scene 2, and the basic day scene 3. And below that, I get the basic night scene 1. I get the basic night scene 2. And then below that, I have sunset scene 1, sunset scene 2, and sunset scene 3. There are more below the clay rendering. We'll get to that a little bit later on in the semester. But for your purposes, the night scene would satisfy the night rendering requirement. But I will also let some, probably all of the sunset scenes satisfy the night rendering requirement as well. So if you'd rather do a sunset rendering than a true night rendering, that's okay. The point is seeing the lights that are in a scene. If you want to take a preview of any one of these, you can click on the image and it'll open up the image. This one's really, really dark for you guys to see on screen. Let's see if I can pick one of the ones. I'll pick the sunset one, for example. You can see a preview of what it looks like. So there's the sky, there's the sunset, but you can see I have some lights that have been installed. So you can kind of get a sense for, oh, okay, this would still be kind of like a night rendering. In this case, the sun is below the horizon, so we're not getting any direct sun as part of this scene. This one, yeah, the sun's already gone down in this scene. It's a little bit brighter. Let me see this sunset. This one, I think it's about to go down. So any one of those would be fine. The night scenes are also okay. It's pretty hard for you guys to see what's happening in the night scenes because they're very much dark. Anyway, we're going to work today from one of these examples. I'm going to do this sunset scene just for the fun of it, but you could pick any of them. Now, as I look at this sunset scene 2, it tells me that I need the background, and this is the HDRI. I need to download it. I can't give it to you because of licensing, so you actually have to go to their website and purchase it for $0 or €0. It is the way it is. Probably requires you to sign up via email to get it. But it's also setting a few other pieces of information. My reflection and refraction background is at 30. My GI skylight is at 100. So it's very different settings than some of the other things that we've done before. But instead of actually writing all of this stuff down, I'm going to download the VisOpt file that loads all of this stuff for us. So instead of having to write it down, we can load that in. So if I click on this link, it's going to look like code, which isn't particularly helpful. It's actually an XML file. So instead, right-click on the link and say Save Link As, and put that link someplace where you'll be able to find it again. So I have a folder inside my resources for my HDRI. It's in Vray and then Vray HDRI. I have sunset HDRIs, and I forget which one this one is. Yeah, it's this one. And I already have the file in there, so I don't actually have to save it. But that's where I would save it. So it would match up in the same location as where the HDRI files would live. I can then go into my Vray, or excuse me, into my master site file, followed by my Vray Options. So once again, I would click on the O button in my Vray toolbar, or click on Vray and then Options. And one of the ways to confirm that these settings have actually loaded is to open one of the drawers. Doesn't matter which one. And with one of them open, I'll go in and I'll load that setting. So I'm going to go find that setting. It was in my flash drive. Let's see here. It was in Resources, Vray, HDRI, Sunset. It was the first one. And there's that VisOpt file. That's what I need to load. When I click Open, once it actually loads in the settings, it closes all the drawers. That's why I opened one, so that I can see that it visually that it loaded. So now that it's loaded, I need to make sure that it's pointing to the correct HDRI image and it knows where that HDRI image is. So I'll click on the Environment drawer and I'll confirm the GI skylight and the reflection and refraction background match up. So I'll click on the M for GI skylight. I'll click on Preview. It didn't load. It's showing up gray, so I need to go find this file. I'll click on the 3 dots. It's going to be in my OneDrive here. Under Resources, Vray, HDRI, Sunsets, first one, there it is. And I need, the first one is going to be the Environment, so the ENV, there it is. And I'll go ahead and say Open. The settings should all be correct, it's just the path. So it's already a UV-Gen environment and it's spherical. If I were to preview it, I would now get a preview, though it's just showing me black. Let me click down here on the reflection refraction background, and I'll make sure it knows where the 059 ref file would be. Go ahead and say OK. That one's loaded. Again, all the settings are preloaded for me, which is perfect. And I'll go ahead and say OK. So now in this particular setup, the sun is below the horizon, so I need to make sure that my sun right here should be turned off for this rendering. It's a night rendering. I need to make sure that my sun is off. So I'll go to Vray. We can close the options for right now. I'll go to my layers. I should have an environment layer. I should have a sun layer. Inside of that sun layer, I should be able to turn the sun off. Now, if you do your rendering and you're seeing sunlight coming across the floor, even with a black background, obviously something's wrong and you didn't turn off your sun. In other cases, maybe you turned off your sun, but in global switches, your hidden lights is checked on. That would mean that if your light is turned off, if the layer that your light is on is hidden or turned off, then it would still render. So you want to make sure that that is unchecked, which it should be by default.
It should be in your file too, right? You set up a whisper.
The what?
The file we download for the set.
Right. It should be checked correctly. So I'm just showing you where it is, just in case. Okay. So the sun is turned off. It looks like my spotlights, I accidentally put them on my sun layer. So that's a problem. So let me create a new layer for lights. Let me back that out so it's its own layer. Back it all the way out. There it is. Let's do a sublayer for spotlights. And I'm going to do an SEL light to select all the lights except for my sun. So we need to make sure that sun gets deselected. These are just my point lights, and I'm going to move them all onto the spotlights layer. Excuse me, they're my spotlights. Change object layer. Yep, good. And then I can come back and turn my sun off as it should be. So that was just a layering mistake on my part. So I have my spotlights on, my sun is off. That's all a good sign. Let's come back to the quick rendering setups and double check a few other things. So these should already have been set. The physical camera is on and the shutter speed is set to 50. If I went into my Vray Options and I went to my physical camera here, it's on, it's set to 50, so all of those loaded correctly, that's good. We can turn on distributed rendering, which I will do before I do any kind of a large render. So let me go back here. I'm ready to do the test render. Remember, when we do test renderings, we're going to go into our output right there, and I'm going to make sure that the output is set really small so I can confirm that it's working and the night settings are correct. Looks like Vray just tanked out on me here. Let's try that one more time. There we go. I'll do a height of like 100. So again, it's really small. And then we'll go ahead and do a rendering. So I can tell already that it's going to be too bright. My 50 shutter speed, my 1/50th of a second was too bright. So I need to go in, back to my Vray Options, I need to go to my camera, and I need to change my shutter speed. Chances are the 50 was set when it was an exterior rendering instead of an interior. There's plenty of light in here. Let's go down to 200 and give it a shot. So there it is. Looks like outside is working out okay. So outside it's nice and dark. Let's go ahead and render that. Already feels a little bit better. There you go. It looks pretty good. Looks like I lost my art on the wall, so I'm going to have to go back and fix the missing piece of art from last class. The other thing that's happening is the rest of my building is dark because I haven't installed any lights in the rest of my building. So here's an example where just because I have the lights in the one room, chances are I need to install lights in the other rooms as well, just for the rendering of this view to look correct. So I'm double checking all of these things before I do my final higher quality rendering. So everything's set up correctly now. If I went into my Vray Options here, I could save my Vray Options. And so let me go back to today's folder here. This is my night. And so here's the advantage. I have the night settings. I just did that rendering. I want to go back and do the day rendering. All I have to do is reload the day render settings. So there's the day. Everything loaded in correctly. I turn my sun back on, and I could jump in and do a day rendering from the same place. So the VisOps settings allow us to save this back and forth. Oh, my size was up because that was the last rendering that I did. Let me go to my options here, drop it down. And so there's my day rendering. The sun's on, my streaks are coming in through the window, and everything's perfect. So I'm able to switch back and forth between day and night once I start to have these set up. It's possible as we go forward that you might have a visopt for interior day, exterior day, interior night, exterior night. So you might end up with 4 visopts that you're changing and rotating through. It depends on the settings once we get to the outside. So there it is. There's my day rendering again. So I can go back to my Vray options. I can load, and I can switch back to the night. And I can say open, and that then reopens my night settings. So I can flip back and forth and see the 2 different renderings. So it's really important to save those visop files so that you can do this as you go forward. If you're watching, or if you go back and watch one of my earlier lectures on the same topic, so if you go back a couple semesters and watch it, I used to recommend just doing a save as and having a night version and a day version. The visop file is easy enough to load that I don't think it's too much of a challenge to just do it that way. And then you're only working on one file, which I think is a good thing. So the rest of the time today, I'm going to encourage you to really try to work through this. The more you do, the further along you go, the better off you're going to be. When you come back next week, we're going to do an exterior day rendering, and then Carla's going to talk to you guys about doing some Photoshop work on that exterior day rendering, and making sure that, especially if you have some Photoshop skill, that you can kind of quickly get through it. And so we'll go through that next week, and then after that, we're going to move into creating line drawings from your Rhino model. So you spent all this work to actually create the model. Why shouldn't you be able to quickly create a plan, a section, an elevation, and those kinds of pieces? So that's where we're going through the rest of the semester. There's not that much time left, so it's important to use your time wisely. And that's a lot of why I'm encouraging you guys to work today. If I can, I'm going to try to get you guys updated grade sheets before the end of class today, but it depends on how many of you have questions. I know you want to know exactly where you are, but I have to make it, so I'm doing my best. Okay, so I'm going to be working on that, and we'll get updated. In doing some of the preliminary grading, getting ready to hand you back the grade sheets, a lot of people have missing stuff. So that is not too serious of a problem right now, but I'm going to start being nervous the closer it gets to the end of the semester with stuff missing. And a lot of you, I see some nodding heads, so you already know you're missing a few things, and that's okay. So just make sure you actually turn the stuff in. Okay? Any global questions? No? All right. I'll let you guys start working.